This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from People Forward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self. Hey everyone, it's Rosie. I hope that you just dig in and listen to this conversation I had with my friend and colleague, Dr. Gary Sanchez. He is the founder of the Why Institute and the creator of the WHY.os discovery tool, which is mind-blowing, builds off Simon Sinek's work. We talk about how we first met. We talk about how we're using it and the value, whether you use this tool or not. So it's not a conversation that it's an infomercial for it. It's just really understanding his work, where it came to be, and how it benefits. And it's just such a impactful way of looking at the life and really helping us think about how do we get clear about who we authentically are and how do we convey that to the world, and are we showing up as our authentic self? And so there's a lot of things I encourage you to think about. If you've taken the WHY.os discovery, think about it in the conversation. If you haven't, it's really a good conversation of self-reflection to help us really understand the value of not just ourselves being able to show up as we authentically are, but honoring others and creating spaces where others can also show up as they authentically are, and really looking at such a huge difference of, are we able to do something versus do we love to do something? And can we start to be intentional to create teams and workplaces that enable people to spend time in what they love versus they're capable and able? So I hope you get a lot out of this conversation and enjoy. All right, Mr. Gary, I don't know how in the heck that we have known each other for almost, going on 4 years, and you've not been on the show yet, but here we are, something.
So, Rosie, you might want to, or maybe we should talk about how we actually met, because that in itself is a crazy story.
Well, you know what's really funny is that's how we have to start. So great minds think alike. So here we go. We have to tell the story because I think it is hilarious. So I want to say it was the summer of 2020, and one of my professional friends and colleagues reached out to me and was like, hey, you need to meet this Gary Sanchez person. And I love and trust my network, and I'm blessed to be surrounded by amazing people. And so usually when people who I trust and respect say you need to meet someone, it's like, yeah, there's a reason for it, right? And I don't remember the exact logistics other than, it's era of COVID. So we had a Zoom meeting set up, and I was like, okay, who is this dude? And I think I've told you this, but this is what's funny is, so I went to your website. So I go to the Why Institute, and I see you're talking about why, how, and what. I'm like, okay, Simon Sinek. And then I literally, this is like our brains filling with story. I go, who the hell is this guy? And why is he ripping off Simon Sinek and not attributing crap to him? Like, that was my narrative. I was like, well, I trust this guy. I'm going to meet with Gary. We're going to find out. And then it was a whole snafu because you thought we were meeting in person.
So I had, of all the names, I had 2 Rosie Wards on my calendar. I was meeting with 2 different. One was a doctor here in town, and then the other was you. So I went to the doctor's office when we were supposed to talk, and I walk in. I'm sitting in the lobby, and finally this lady comes out. The receptionist comes out and says, "Do you know what? Do we have an appointment with you today?" And I said, "Yeah, of course you do. It's at 10 o'clock." And she's like, "You're not on our schedule. You're on our schedule next week." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I'm in the wrong one. So I run out to my car, and I jump in my car, and I connect to the internet, and I'm probably like 3 minutes late. And there you are.
Oh, you were more like 10 minutes late, but it was fine.
10 minutes late. And there you were. And I was like, I can't believe she's still here waiting. And I was so apologetic. I was just in the wrong place. And then I'm like, so Rosie, what are we meeting about? And you're like, I don't know.
I don't know how he told us we should meet. You tell me why we're meeting.
And I said, well, does it have anything to do with why? And you're like, yeah. And I said, do you help your clients find their why? And you go, yeah. And I said, it's pretty challenging, isn't it? And you're like, uh-huh. And I said, well, kind of, what if there's a better way? And you're like, well, I'm not sure. And so that's when I think I gave it to you right then. And I said, okay, do it. And then come back on and we will have a conversation about it. And that's kind of how we started. So
yeah, it was pretty funny. So the moral of the story is, guess what? For first impressions or first meetings can be really clunky and really messy and really human and still turn out okay. So there we go.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. And so then obviously, so we're going to talk about that in a second, but then I think it was then in the fall of 2020, went through the why
coach certification, and we've been using it with our clients, and it's obviously evolved a lot. And so part of, besides the fact that we've been, connected now for several years, but part of why I'm excited to have this conversation is obviously your work has evolved. And I just think in this hectic environment, it is so critical to have clarity. And in the work we do, we talk about 5 rehumanizing principles. And one of them is build a lighthouse. And that's, we talk about like the beacon of light from the lighthouse on an organizational and individual level is that clarity of purpose and like what we're about. And that the base of the lighthouse is, our core values. Or if you think about the why operating system, the beacon of light could be the entire operating system, or it could be the why. And then the base is like your how and your what. And it's like, we need something to give us, energy and passion and clarity, but also to have a sense of like calm and groundedness, like just like a lighthouse, like cuts through the fog. And so I think that we keep coming back to that because we know from research that purpose has a protective factor for stress and mental and emotional health and well-being, which so many are struggling with right now. I've been called into CEO peer groups where they're like, hey, we need you to come in and talk about this stuff. And we come back to, yes, there's multiple factors, workload and this and that, but what are you also doing to help align people to purpose? Because that has a protective factor. And so I just think that there's so many things that keep coming back to, we need to have purposeful leadership. We need to have purposeful organizations. So with all of that long-winded, let's talk about then. So oh my God, Gary ripped off Simon Sinek. Who the hell is this guy? To the Why Institute and what you're doing. Talk about how you ended up here and the process behind the Why Institute, and then what we've been alluding to with the WHY.os discovery.
Yeah, I'll bring everybody up to speed and how I was able to rip off Simon Sinek. So
he didn't, obviously, people, but okay, come on.
Totally. All right. So here's how this all happened. I'm actually a dentist, and I graduated from USC Dental School in 1988. Hate to even say that. It seems like yesterday, but obviously it isn't. Advice that I was given at the time was build a great product and people will come, right? We all were told that. So I spent 20 years doing that. I reached the highest levels you could go to in dentistry, worked with the best mentors, studied at the best institutes, built a beautiful practice, had all the technology, very well-trained team, and still blended in with everybody else who said, yeah, I'm a dentist too. Right. And it just drove me crazy. My practice wasn't growing like I thought it would. In fact, it was getting smaller. It was getting more and more refined. People got used to the way we did things, and they weren't talking about us. And my practice wasn't doing what I thought it should for how much effort I'd put into it. And that's when I went out and I hired a coach. I hired a guy by the name of John Assaraf. If you've ever seen the movie The Secret, you know who he is. And through him, I learned how to do websites and drip campaigns and SEO. So I could tell the world all about me. The only problem was, what am I going to say? Right? What am I going to say that separates me from everyone else who does what I do? What am I going to say that doesn't make me sound bad or desperate, like I actually need new clients? And so since I didn't know what to say, I just stayed quiet until one day I heard John Assaraf interview Simon Sinek. And I heard about this whole concept of why. So I went and watched Simon Sinek's TED Talk probably 20, 30 times. I read his book 3, 4 times. I said, man, that is what I'm missing. I have a great what, but I don't know my why. So I became obsessed with this because that concept of why, the whole book, Start With Why, is awesome, but worthless if you don't know your why. It's just another thing that you want but can't have, and it just is upsetting.
Yeah, like you learn how important it is. You learn how important it is to have it, but you don't walk away from it going, I feel any closer to understanding what mine is other than I need to figure it out. Yeah.
Yes. And he's not the only one that says this. You know, Tony Robbins and Michael Hyatt. And I mean, you could go on and on. All the kind of gurus of that era talk about, you got to know your why, got to know your why, got to know your why. And that's not very helpful. That's like telling a kid, you got to find your passion. That doesn't do them any good unless you can help them find their passion. So I called Simon and I said, Simon, I need you to help me discover my why. So he and I spent about 8 months together going back through my life looking for clues. He didn't really have a process for doing it, but we just kept working with it. And I finally figured out my why. And my why is to find a better way and then share it. Find a better way and share it. And that's when my life started to make sense to me. I have a lot of patents and products and inventions that are all better ways of doing things. And then I share them with the world. So in my practice, we stopped talking about what we do, crowns, bridges, fillings, all that fun stuff, right? And we started talking about why we do what we do and what we believe, right? We believe that life is better when you have great teeth. And in fact, you can't have a good life with bad teeth. And that's when people started really coming to us and my practice really took off. And we went from just getting by to having abundance, 4 to 6 new patients a month to 35 to 45 a month. And we did better every year. This was in 2010. We did better every year from 2010 on. More fun, most satisfaction, most enjoyment, most profit. And what happened was I started getting calls from all the dentists that I had been studying with that were saying, hey, can you help me do what you did? So I went back and figured out what Simon was trying to do, and I made it better. So instead of taking 6 or 8 or 10 months, I could sit down with you, Rosie, and in about an hour, help you discover your why. And so I started doing this for anybody that would let me. I did it on stages, on Skype. Remember, I'm a dentist. So every one of my patients, when they're getting numb, they're going to get their why discovered.
They can't talk and like, but you're going to start drilling them with questions.
I learned how to understand
awesome.
what they were saying. And so as I did this more and more, I started to notice patterns and trends and similarities, just like anybody would when they do something a lot of times. And I figured out there's only 9 different whys. That was the most important thing I figured out, because once there were 9 whys, then there became an endpoint. Then there was a place to get to. Then I could teach other people to do what I was doing. Then I could get more data. With that data, I was able to develop the algorithm where in 2016, we launched the Why Discovery that just found your why. And we gave that away to hundreds of thousands of people to test it. Then in 2021, we launched the WHY.os Discovery, which you know about, that finds your why, how, and what, and builds your message for you in about 8 minutes. And so here's the important thing, Rosie. I've done more why discoveries than probably anybody in the world. And I was only about 70% accurate. 30% of the time I was wrong. So if everything you do in your life, your passion, your purpose, your direction, your messaging, your marketing, your branding is all based on your why, you think it's important that you get it right. And so that's what the WHY.os
just a little.
Yeah, just a little bit. I had my own wife's wrong.
Well, and you know what, though? It is interesting because with the why, I will say, because I joined you when it was just the why, and it was a process where in 2 or 3 minutes, people would figure out their why. And you have to talk about the algorithm and stuff and how that works in a second. But, you would take this discovery, not an assessment, a discovery, and you would figure out your why. Then I would spend another hour with individuals, right, with a series of questions to try to help them figure out, of the remaining 8 whys, which is their how and which is their what. And there would be a lot of back and forth, and I'm not sure. And you're right. I think we got accurate with some, close with others, but it was a very different process. And once you figured out and were able to launch the full WHY.os Discovery, it was interesting to go back and have some of those previous why only, take it to kind of go, how close did we get? And does this feel better or not? But it also is it's either validating and or, oh, okay, yep, something wasn't quite right. So
yeah. Which was the same thing with the why before we had the WHY.os. When I thought I had somebody's why right, and then I had them go take the why discovery, that just found your why, I found out how inaccurate I was. And I did the best I could, but that's all we had. And now there's a better way, right? Now there's a way to make sure that we have it right. And so you were asking about now, like, how did this actually happen? So if you're somebody listening and you've got a process that is really valuable to the people you work with and you want to find a way to scale it. So here's what I thought, Rosie. There was a time when I thought, I'm the only one that can do this, right? I'm special. I've done all this work. I've done 10,000 hours of why discoveries. I can see it. Nobody else can see it. They got to come to me to figure it out. And there was a time when I kind of thought that. And so I had a humbling moment where a buddy of mine said, you know what, Gary, if that's true, how big of an impact are you going to have in your lifetime? And I thought, gosh, I'm really not going to have much of an impact. I'm not going to help that many people. Not many people are going to be able to find their why. If I'm the only one that can do this and I, right, it's all about me. And then I realized that that's not true. And so I had to find a way to scale. And so what happened was I mind mapped the process that I was using so that I could teach that process. And once I knew that there were 9 whys, okay, so the why, your why is housed in the limbic part of your brain, the inner part of your brain. And that's the part of the brain that's responsible for feelings, but it doesn't have the capacity for language. So you can't tell somebody why you feel a certain way, you just do. And the only way that I could access the limbic brain and your why was through stories. So I used to hear story after story after story, and I could recognize the pattern in the story. You would basically tell me the same story 3 times, and I could see the pattern. You just have different people in it. And that's how I would figure out what your why is. And so once I knew there were 9 whys, that was what changed everything. So I want you to imagine that you are an artist and you are creating this amazing painting, and you get emotionally involved with it and physically involved with it and spiritually involved with it. And it takes you months to create this masterpiece. Once you've created it, once it's on the canvas, there's now other ways to get to that same thing. You could do paint by numbers. You could take a picture and break it down and create an outline and figure out how to fill it in. There's a lot of other ways to get to it. So once I figured out there were 9 whys, then I figured out a different way to get to them where we didn't have to listen to all these stories, where it didn't require interpretation. And so whatever process you have that are listening, if you can figure out the process or the pattern in it, then you can figure out other ways to do it so that you can scale. And that's exactly what I did.
So you figured out this process. There's 9, because it was funny. I have to tell you that one of the people that I am coaching right now that I had take the WHY.os discovery before we did some other assessments because it's part of our process. It was interesting because I got asked some very specific questions, like this person struggled a lot and was like, well, but it depends. And well, what if it's this? And what if it's that? And in my head, I'm like, this person has to be mastery or something, right? Because I was like the way that they were, but there was a lot of questions about the process and how it was validated and how are you supposed to answer it and whatnot. And once I came back and told this person there's 4,500 questions or whatever, it calmed that person down and they're like, oh, it makes sense. And they were able to go back in and finish it, but they were like paralyzed and couldn't even take it. So I don't know. I just wonder if you can speak to the process and speak to that a little bit.
And the reason that Rosie mentioned that we call it a discovery instead of a quiz or a test or an assessment or a survey is because it is. A test would be, say, 30 questions. We all answer the same 30 questions. You get a score, and that's your result. Well, the WHY.os discovery actually has over 4,000 possible question options, and I use logic-based programming, so you don't have to answer all the questions. Your next question is based on the one you just answered, and then it wipes away the ones that you don't need to answer. So you'll answer about 30 to 35 questions to get to your why, how, and what. And it actually goes even a lot deeper than that, but you'll know your why, how, and what. And your message will be built for you in about 30 to 35 questions. So it double checks itself as it goes. And the questions are not hard, there is no right or wrong answer. It's just the way it is. The results, there's no positive or negative to it. It's just, what is your why? And that's why it's so valuable. It gives you the answer to the question, why are you here? What were you put on earth to do? Why should I choose you over everyone else who does what you do? It gives you the words to clearly tell the world exactly who you are and why they should choose you. And that is so valuable.
Well, and I will say I love that, Gary, because here's what is that I had done prior to you and I meeting. It was funny because I think my early taglines that I used to, you go through multiple taglines of your work and stuff, but it was like transformation through better thinking. And my bio is always like known for challenging the status quo and known for being a thought leader and all this type of stuff. Right. And so I remember when I took it, not surprising, my why came out as challenge. And then did it again and it came out as chat. And I was like, okay, yeah, that resonates. But here's the thing that I liked is but then it was really it was wow, but the how and the what that gave language, because you give the simple language. So it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I provide transformation through better thinking, or I challenge the status quo, or I do whatever. But when I was able to say, and you'll laugh, for those that are listening that are familiar with this tool, if you're not, you will. True of the why of challenge. I don't like your language for the why of challenge, so I make up my own, right? But I'm able to say to people when they say like, "What do you do?" I never have answered with "What do you do?" I always talk about our purpose or what I believe. So if they talk about your company, I always go there. Well, what does your company do? Well, our purpose is to rehumanize the workplace so people can bring their best selves to work and home each day. How we do that is da 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 da. On an individual level, I now have the language to say, I believe success happens fundamentally when we challenge outdated processes and limited thinking. How I do that is by finding better ways and sharing it. And ultimately, what people can count on me for is to add value to their lives and contribute in a positive way. Boom, right? It's like, oh my God. And so then now it's a filter of, you only have so many hours in the day. So when a request comes in, what do I say yes to? What do I say no to? Where's the best and brightest use that I can have in my organization with my clients? It's not, is something above me or beneath me? Is that the best use of my time? And is that going to be aligned with, allowing my gifts to shine versus somebody else, which I think also gets us to two different things that I think is super important is one, how do we talk to one another? Because one of the things that I love about the work you do, Gary, and how it's really impacted us, I'm going to say on a personal level, but on a business level and with our clients is you talk about the platinum rule. And so can you say a little bit more about the platinum rule? And then I want to give you an example of how impactful this has been. So talk about what the platinum rule is.
Well, everybody knows what the golden rule is. Golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated, right? And so what are the odds that Rosie and I both want to be treated the same way? So if I treat Rosie the way I want to be treated, she's going to say, you don't get me. I may understand what you're saying, but you don't get me. You don't understand me. Let me think about it. So that's when we use the platinum rule. And the platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated. And so how you do that is by knowing their why, how, and what, because that gives you the language that Rosie speaks. So her why, Rosie's why, is to challenge the status quo and think differently. How she does that is by finding better ways and sharing them. And ultimately, what she brings is a way to contribute, add value, have an impact in the lives of others. So her why is challenge, her how is better way, and her what is contribute. My why is to find a better way. How I do that is by making things clear and understandable. And ultimately, what I bring is a simple solution. So for me, it has to be better, clear, and simple. For Rosie, it has to be different, better, and have an impact. If I treat her the way I want to be treated, she's going to think I don't get her. So now I know the language she speaks. So if I have an idea that I want to propose to Rosie, I better show her how it's different than what's currently out there. I better show her how it's better than what's currently out there. And I better show her how it's going to help her and the people in her life have a bigger impact, or she's not going to want it. If I show her that, she's going to say, well, what would you say? Let me do it, Rosie. Let me show you how this is different than what you're currently doing. Let me show you how this is better than what's currently out there. And let me show you how it's going to help you have a bigger impact.
I'm open to listening, right? I mean, that's exactly what happened when we first met. After he's ripping off Simon Sinek and who the hell is this guy and he's late and whatever, right? but as soon as you did that, it was like, oh, and you're right. And when I started to think about obviously as a founder of a company, our company kind of mirrors my why and stuff too. But you start to realize the people that we attract tend to be people who want to make an impact, who believe that there's a better way to do things, who, understand that they can be different or unique or stand out. Like those are the types of people that tend to gravitate, towards us, that they fit at least in one of those. And it does, it's like, okay. And nothing drives me nuts more. No one wants to be sold. But when someone you don't feel like you're being sold when it's like, oh, now I'm going to listen. And what's so fascinating about that is I remember when this is before you had the WHY.os and it was just the why. But as you're getting certified and you're testing them out, and I was doing them with people around me. And I remember at the time we had a marketing partner. They did our website and they also did our marketing. So it was like an IT, whatever. And we loved working with them. And they're great, great folks. And it was funny because I used to get frustrated with one of them when it came to website stuff. And for the love of God, just fricking do it. And would ask 5 million questions and processes got slowed. And I was like, what in the hell? And it would drive me nuts. And then I realized she was a Y of mastery. I was like, oh my God, now I understand. But now I understood it. And it was like, oh, okay. Or now I know, when I'm working with someone who has that why, I better start talking about the research and the depth, right? Because if they don't know, they're going to tune me out. If your why is simplify, I better be really succinct and get to the point, or you've just tuned me out. So it does give me language. Now I do know how to talk to people. It's kind of like if someone's speaking English and someone else is speaking, pick any other language, Spanish, French, whatever, you don't understand one another. I view it as a very similar way.
Yeah. And it allows you, so if you're in sales, it allows you to, so Rosie, I don't meet with anybody personally or on Zoom unless I know their WHY.os What are we going to talk about? Where's the conversation going to go? So like, what sports team are you into? Where do you live? Like, tell me about your kids. Like, it's just a bunch of fluffy stuff instead of like, what are we on the call for? And you're able to get right down to the essence of what's going well in their life, what's not going well in their life. How can I help you? Because it's very predictable. Once you know their WHY.os, you know the great things that's happening for them, and you know the things that are not going well, and you know where you can help them, and you know where they need help and what they're looking for. It's very quick and easy to get to that. And here's what's really nice about it. It stops all the BS, meaning I don't have to now be sneaky at all about our conversation. I don't have to try to present things a certain way. I can just say, Rosie, so your why is challenge, your how is better way, your what is contribute. How does that feel to you? And I'll have you read your message out loud. I'll say, how does that feel to you? And you'll say, feels great. That feels like exactly me. And I'll say, okay, so what that tells me is that you want solutions that are different, that are going to push the limit, that are going to expand what people think they can do, that are going to get people outside their box. Is that right?
Yep.
You're going to say, well, what are you going to say? Yeah. And then I'm going to say, well, you also want things that are better, though. You want it different, but it has to be better. Is that right? You're always looking for better ways.
There's no point in being different if it's not going to add value and be better. Yeah.
And then lastly, you want it to have an impact in their lives, because when they have a bigger impact, you're going to have a bigger impact. Is that right?
Yep.
So now tell me what that means for you in terms of what you're looking for and how I can help you. What would be a different way for me to help you? What would be a better way for me to help you? And what would be a way that I can help you have a bigger impact? And then you just tell me what you want. And then I just say, okay, well, then let's go do it. So it's not a sneaky sales process or anything. It's just direct, out in the open. Nothing fancy. It lets us have a conversation that would have taken us forever to have, because I'll know exactly who I'm speaking to.
The point that I find so fascinating, besides being able to speak someone else's language on a one-on-one, is we've been doing more and more of this work in two different facets with our clients. One is actually including it as part of, we have like a talent review process, not like a performance review, but we're using that along with some assessments that we use and some other metrics to really start to help identify leadership bench strength and where people shine and where they have gifts, et cetera. And when they're looking for succession planning and they're looking for who do we put into other roles, it also kind of helps you know, based on the organization, going back to, Jim Collins 101, right seats on the bus, is this person going to be miserable in this type of role, or here's different things, or here's how you can leverage it. So we've been using it in that type of process from a development, succession, bench strength. But the other thing is really with the whole team dynamic. So we're doing a lot more of team WHY.os. And what's so fascinating about it, like you said, oh, I know how to talk to you. Well, you've got teams that are frustrated, and because there's 9 whys, it goes out 9 deep. And so you might know people's why, how, what, but even on our team internally, we recently added a new operations person to the team. And you're going to laugh at this, Gary. I was so thankful because the person's why is right way, which is my number 9. I'm like, oh, for the love of God. But here's the thing is that I know enough that I appreciate scalability. I appreciate processes and stuff so that people aren't going back to better way. Like if someone has to keep doing it over and over, there's a reason why we have standard operating procedures. There's a reason why we have some structure, because it makes things less cumbersome, right? So it feeds into my better way a little bit. I just don't want it to be so rigid and structured that I want to lose my ever loving mind. And so it's so funny because you'd think, oh my goodness, but I always am I need your right way brain, because what it does is it gives me guardrails and structure so that it's kind of like the wind beneath my wings, that I can go fly and do my challenge thing. But I don't want to have to create that stuff. I need to know it's there so that I know my team can function and I know the business can function, because I know, I'm smart enough to know that you need to have that stuff in place. Because as you say, businesses and teams will spin without a right way person. So it's interesting because you'd think I'd get super frustrated. It's more of, no, I need that. I just, for the love of God, I cannot be the one to do it. So it's oh, thank God you have a right way brain. Just don't bog me down in the details, because I just need to know that it works and I need to know it's functioning, and let me know the parameters so I know how much I can bust out and how much I have to stay within the lines. And it's golden, right? So it's we know how to, or even on our team, one of the people on my team has a why a better way, and sometimes can go down a rabbit hole. So it's like, we need you to regulate your why a better way. Nope. Like, we need to stop better way in it. We need to have our minimum viable product, like whatever. Right. And so it also can help us have the language of, because any strength can turn into a form of armor if it's overused or misused. So we always talk about, are you overusing whatever it is, makes sense or right way, or going down a rabbit hole, et cetera. And so I just think when we've done some of these lately with teams, it's been super eye-opening for them. Like, there was one group where the leader of the team thought this one person was just being defiant. And when this person's why came out as clarify, they realized this person wasn't being defiant. They were asking a lot of questions to try to get clear, not to try to like challenge you or be a pain in the ass. And so it was like this, oh, right. So, because we make up stories in the absence of data, our brains filled in with stories, and we fill it in with whatever we've assumed about a person versus, oh, that's just their process of how they think about things or how they go about things. And now that I get that, I don't have to make up a story about them, and I can figure out how to function. So I just want to say it's been super, super helpful for us internally as a team. Like, we keep coming back to it of like, okay, who do we go to for this? Okay, this is really a make sense person, or this is really a right way person, or this is fine for better way, or you know what? Okay, we need Rosie to blow this up with her challenge brain or whatever it is. So it helps us know who to go to, but also then with our clients, it really does help them know how to talk to one another and gives that language. So I'm super appreciative of it. So here's what I want to ask you is, obviously you created this, you've been doing this a long time. What has been your biggest surprise in doing this work with helping people get clear and have language of what their why operating system is or what makes them tick?
I would say that you hit on it just there, because there's such a difference between being able to do something and loving to do it. If I forced you to create structure, you could do it, but you would not enjoy doing it. The person on your team with Right Way loves to do it. They thrive on that. And you're like, thank you for being that person. So you get to appreciate them for the gift they have that you need, but don't want to do. And so what you said was, you get appreciated for the things that you bring, the gifts that you have. The narrative goes away. So what happens, just like you were saying, Rosie, you meet somebody for the first time, or maybe this is even somebody you've known for a long time, your spouse, your kids, and you create a narrative around what you think you see. You look at their hairstyle, what they're dressed, and like on Zoom, we look in the background. What do they have in the background? And then you create a narrative around who you think they are, and that's who they become. Well, odds are you're not accurate. And so you're going to treat somebody in a way that isn't true to who they are. Like you said, the person that was asking all the questions got labeled as a pain in the whatever, right? If they don't know your WHY.os or mine or anybody's, you get labeled a certain thing.
Yeah, like being difficult, or, not coloring inside the lines, or, not following policies or procedure. Yeah, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, why doesn't she just conform? Why doesn't she just do what we tell her to do? Why won't she show up at 8? We want her to be in her chair at 8:00. Well, I'm not going to do that. Well, why won't you?
Because you're telling me to.
Exactly. Why don't you want to be told what to do? Because I don't want to be told what to do. But once you know it, then you can go with the positive side of it, the strength to that. Put them in a place where they're going to thrive. And that's how you build an inspired organization. That's how you build an inspired team. That's how people learn to appreciate each other and value each other and have so much more fun. Even the negative stuff becomes obvious. What you perceive as the negative conversations or the challenges become obvious. Now, you know that person's going to ask a lot of questions that has the why of clarify. They're trying to get clear. That's why they're asking so many questions. So now you can say, okay, I got it. You are wanting to get clear. So what exactly is it that you need for you to be clear? And then you can help them get there faster and move things forward a lot faster.
Let's turn it to you, Gary. What have you, over the last few years of sitting with this and, being clear about who you are and how do you leverage that, what have you learned about yourself in this journey and in this process?
I've learned what I don't do well and how much I need other people. And for the longest time, the why was just me. And because I was the only, it was just me doing it while I was a dentist, in between patients, after work, at lunch. And I could only get so far on my own. And how much I value having a team around me now that does all the things that I do terrible. They do well. And I get to play in my lane. I get to get in my sandbox that I like to be in. My things that I like to do are connect, collaborate, and create. I get to go do that. How much fun is that? And I have people that love to do all those other things that I don't like to do. They love to do them. So it's helped me to figure out also what I should be doing with my life. And so knowing your WHY.os may not make your life easier. In fact, it may make it more challenging, but it makes it so much more rewarding and so much more fulfilling when what you're doing is what you should be doing. If what you choose to do with your life is in line with your why, your how, and your what, you will love what you do. You will have passion for what you do. You will feel the purpose of what you do. And that's when life becomes fulfilling. And that's what happened to me. So if you're trying to find your passion, or you're trying to help someone else find their passion, help them discover their WHY.os, and then make sure what they choose to do is in line with their WHY.os, so they'll have passion for what they do. And passion is the fuel that gives you the energy to pursue your dreams, right? Without passion, you give up. With passion, you'll persevere. I've made so many mistakes on this journey. There's so many things I did wrong path, wrong software, wrong people I connected with. But I have the passion to keep moving forward because it's something that I'm going to bring to the world. I know it, and it's happening now. But what does a dentist know about developing software? Nothing. What does a dentist know about bringing software to the world? Nothing. So I had to learn along the way. And the same thing can happen to you.
One of the things in the work that we do and where the WHY.os fits in so nicely is I'm obsessed with normalizing the messiness of being human, and that being human is hard and we all get in our own way. Doesn't matter how clear we are on who we are and our why operating system and our values and all those things, we are programmed to get in our own way. And so I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody on this show. I'm going to ask you to get real and vulnerable here. What is a self-limiting story that you still tell yourself sometimes? And when it shows up, how do you deal with it and move beyond it so that you can still show up as a leader and have the impact you want to have in your life?
Am I the best person to bring this to the world? Is there a better person than me? As a better way person, I'm attached to what is better. I'm not attached to what we're currently doing. I'm attached to what's better. So if there is somebody better, I would gladly pass it off and gladly step out of the limelight and step out of what I've been doing. But that is a limiting story that I have.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Gary. And I think it's fair. I think anybody who is the founder of a company, or not even the founder, I will say I coach a lot of CEOs, and there's the imposter syndrome that creeps in. Am I the person to do this? Should I be here, et cetera? So can totally appreciate that. All right. Are you ready for quick questions?
Sure.
All right. Fill in the blank. Living authentically is?
Living into your WHY.os.
When the world is presenting an opening, but you don't feel like showing up as a leader, what do you do?
Go back to what you committed to. Just do it.
What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
That at one point in my life, I was sure I was going to be an NBA basketball player. And when I was very small, young, like in elementary school, in my mind, I always remembered playing basketball on the playground basketball court, and how there was all these people that would come to watch us. That was in my own mind, I was only like third grade. And it was so funny because this other friend of mine and I, we were the two best basketball players in Albuquerque, at that time, because we played in the boys club league and all the leagues. Anyways, so I was 100% sure I was going to be an NBA basketball player, but I didn't grow.
That's why I was laughing for people. Gary's not, you're average height, but you're not that tall. So I'm like, okay.
No, but I was really short. So when I got to high school, I was only like 5 feet tall. So I grew after high school. I grew my first year in college. So I ended up even quitting playing basketball by the time I got to be about a junior. So I switched from basketball to racquetball, and I ended up being the world champion in racquetball. So I never would have been anything as a basketball player. So my worst thing that happened to me ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me.
That's awesome. I love that. All right. What is something you can't live without?
Red chili. I eat spicy food probably 90% of the time.
What is something in your ordinary daily life that makes your heart happy?
Every day I get to help give someone the words to tell the world exactly who they are. And the aha moment that I see every day is addicting.
All right, Gary, one last question as we wrap up for today. If you could challenge leaders everywhere to practice this one behavior that would create more human workplaces and equip everyone to show up as a leader, what would that be?
Make a decision to figure out who you are. Decide. Whatever method you want to use. Doesn't have to be WHY.os. Whatever method. Figure out who you are so you can lead from that place.
I love that. It might as well be you because everyone else is taken, as the saying goes, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this was so fun. Thank you, Gary, for, first of all, quote unquote, ripping off Simon Sinek. You didn't, right? But thank you for working with Simon and actually, making it better and bringing it to the world, because I know it's been super impactful for me personally, professionally, and for so many others. And this has been a super fun conversation. So much gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Rosie, and thank you for being part of it. And thank you for using it the way that you do, because you've made it part of everything you do. And I appreciate that. And I know the people that work with you appreciate it as well. So thanks for having me.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to peopleforwardnetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.